Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hallelujah, הנה מה טוב ובנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ובנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
Shabbat Shalom and welcome. I'm Rabbi Javier Carapan, and I am joined by Leslie, Joel, Larry, Warren, and our technical team. A big thank you to our BOW committee for bringing us beyond our walls, and also to our digital docents who are managing the streaming behind the scenes. If you're joining us here in person, not a few, you are joining us here in person indeed. We're calling the page numbers in the square brackets. And that is because at home, you're probably following the service. If you're following the service on the PDF, everything is just one page after the other. So
Yeah, or if you bought the flip book, that's also
true.
just one set of pages.
For those of you here, please make sure that your electronic devices are on silent. We're all doing that, making sure. As we come together on Shabbat, we begin by lighting the candles. At home, if you have candles, we invite you to light them and join us on page 120 as we light the candles and welcome Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue together on page 121. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so we, in our own way, be among those who kindle light. Continue together welcoming Shabbat on page 140 as we join in the opening lines of Psalm 92, Mizmor Shir.
Mizmor Shir leYom HaShabbat, Mizmor Shir leYom HaShabbat, Mizmor Shir leYom HaShabbat, Tov lehodot leAdonai ulezamer Shimcha Elyon. Mizmor Shir, Mizmor Shir leYom HaShabbat, Mizmor Shir leYom HaShabbat, Mizmor Shir leYom HaShabbat, Mizmor Shir leYom HaShabbat.
Service continues with Lecha Dodis on page 138. We are singing together the stanzas, the odd number stanzas 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9.
Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. שמוע וזכור בדיבורך והשמיענו אליו יוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד השם ותפארת ולתהילה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה.
מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, מצאים מתוך האפתחה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה.
Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, חיבה אורי, קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עליך נגלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה.
והיו למשיסה שוסייך, ורחקו כל מבעלייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהייך, תמסוס חתן על כלה.
Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה בני שבת לקבלה.
Continue together on page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way in which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night as heaven spans to infinity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim.
Ahat olam Beit Yisrael, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, b'shokbenu u'b'chonenu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'b'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki הם חיינו באורך ימינו, ובהם נגד יומם ולילה. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Amen. Continue together on page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש. נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה
Join together in the middle of page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and rise us up, O guardian, to life renew. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו אותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. יהיו לרצון ימי פי לפניך, יהיו לרצון עם לפי, והגיון ליבי לפניך. אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגואלי. אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגואלי. יהיו לרצון עם לפי, והגיון ליבי לפניך. יהיו לרצון עם לפי, והגיון ליבי לפניך. אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגואלי. אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגואלי.
As we gather in this Shabbat, we turn our thoughts to those in need of healing. You may have access to the Mishaberach list through the e-news that you received earlier today. You can also follow the link in the comments. If you like to offer names, we invite you to type them in the comments so we can all see them. And for those of us here in person, I invite you to share names as I go around the sanctuaries. They're on this side. Chris Gray. As we think of those in need of healing, page 371, we join together in the Mi Sheberach prayer.
Mi sheberach avotenu vekol haberacha imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekol haberacha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
It is now time for our Simcha moment. If you have a Simcha from this past week, may include your birthday, anniversary, good news, and accomplishments. We invite you to type them in the comments. For those of you who are here in person, we invite you to join us here at the Simcha mic. We ask that you come one at a time. You tell us your name and while you're here. And remember, I'm going to try to read what you write at home. So.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Carol. I think that's what my name tag says anyway. This is for you guys who are beyond our walls. It's time to start coming to services in person. There's a lot of space here, and you can spread out, and you can even wear your mask the whole time you're here. But this week, I came back to choir because I missed a couple of them, and I just love choir. And the one thing about being here is that we got 2 choir members in the front row joining Leslie, which, you know, singing, the 2 of them singing by themselves without being able to have anybody, able to hear anybody singing has probably been a real stretch for them. So now that we're back in person, it would be nice to have more people here. The other thing that happened is that I started swimming, and I've been swimming every day. And I heard on the news that in the morning, women get a different benefit than they do at night. And so I've been doing both. Because at night you build muscle, and in the day, I guess in the morning you build maybe cardio. I don't remember what the morning one was, but I thought both of them sounded good. So I've been doing almost every day, and sometimes I do morning, sometimes I do night, and then I think yesterday I did morning and night, so I'm a little tired, but it's worth it. I love the swimming.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Xuelin Kraus Yao, and I just want to read that we pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hope, not by our words, but by our deeds. I have to confess, a lot of times if people don't treat me nice, I will hold the grudges for a long, long time. And that's something I need to overcome. Confession number 1. Confession number 2, which is a good news, I start hiking, and in the last 2 weeks, I have done 4 times. And because of that, I gave up my YMCA downtown exercise. And good thing is my friend missed me and texted me, how are you doing? Okay. So anyway, counting the blessing, we have a blessing every day. Praise the Lord. Thank you.
And we got one behind you.
Oh, I have one behind me. And tell us your name.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Warren. I have 2 simchas I am celebrating this week. Number 1, my son and daughter-in-law from Honolulu were in visiting, and that was fun to have the whole family together. That was a joy. My other simcha was the rural town in Kansas where I taught in for 33 years. Invited me back to be a guest speaker at their all-school alumni reunion, and that was a thrill.
And I have one. Tomorrow I get to sing with the Juby Brothers at the barbecue. So if you're at the barbecue in person, you get to hear us singing all kinds of rock and roll.
Oh, I bet. And I suppose I should share Simcha this week, although it doesn't happen until tomorrow, which this Parashat Naso is this week's Torah portion. And 24 years ago, I was ordained as a rabbi. So this is my anniversary. So mazel tov to my class out there they're all working, I'm sure, tonight, doing what we normally do. But not everybody is a congregational rabbi, but many of them are celebrating Shabbat on this. So it's always this week's Torah portion. The actual day, Saturday, was June 6 in 1998, but I go by the Hebrew calendar. So, and I'm trying to see if there anybody online. Oh, I got a mazel tov from Chris. Thank you. All right. Okay. No simchas on the virtual. That's all right. That's quite all right. As I mentioned, this week's Torah portion is Parashat Naso, and the word Naso means lift up. And this week's Torah portion has a lot of different themes, and Rabbi Barenblatt writes that this week's Torah poem rose out, everything is lifting, rising, so this one rose out of a different part of the portion that has to do with the laws of the Nazir, which is sometimes rendered in English as the Nazarite. Nazarite? Yes. Someone who takes on particular stringencies as part of a vow to God. So here is her poem. When we rabbis talk, we go from Nazir to Nazirite, very common. So the poem is called Nazir, which is the Hebrew word. I don't want to eschew fat grapes bursting on my tongue, raisins sticky dark sweet, to lose the sensation of emerging from the funeral parlor blinking in the wet sunlight, to let myself apart, never rising my glass in song, unthreaded from the tapestry. So I settle into the chair. I tip my head back, close my eyes, and relish the clench of towel. Afterward, I toss my head to feel the swish, the gift of air on the back of my neck. And all the oaths I haven't uttered crackle salty on my tongue. So I guess she chose not to do not to be a Nazir.
Ugh, it's hard.
So we gather all our simchas, we celebrate together by joining in the Shehecheyanu prayer.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higianu b'zman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higianu b'zman hazeh.
I was just listening to a podcast about the Nazarites and how very, very difficult their choice was.
I'm all about the Nazir tonight, so you're going to hear a lot more about it.
I'm excited about it.
And as I was, now that I'm thinking about this, I forgot that there's an opera about this, so I should have told you about that, but I'm not going to. I will spare you
Next
the
year.
opera. If you want to look it up, it's called Thais, Thais. And there is a Nazir in this whole thing. Anyways, it seems like human nature really leads us to want to control the outcome of difficult situations in which we may find ourselves. And some of us may be tempted to bargain with God. I promise to give up something that I really like in return for getting something else that I really want. Vows are common in some Christian denominations, but less so among Jewish people. But in general, our ancient rabbis express many reservations against taking vows of abstention with some success. Their opposition was a little successful, not very much so. Yet, every generation has people who attempt to separate themselves from the community and dedicate their lives to God. In the Torah, as I mentioned, it's called a Nazarite, and one becomes a Nazir by means of a vow. And this week's Torah portion, Naso teaches specifically at the beginning of chapter 6, Ish o Isha mean a man or a woman who explicitly utters a Nazirite vow. They set themselves apart from Adonai, not apart from Adonai, apart for Adonai. They shall abstain from wine and any other intoxicants. They shall not drink vinegar of wine or any other intoxicant. Neither shall they drink anything with grapes that have been steeped, nor eat grapes fresh or dried, and then something about not cutting their hair and all those things. By the way, the other opera, now that we're talking about a Nazir, is, of course, the guy who cuts his hair, right? Samson et Dalila. Two French operas, by the way, both interesting now, I'm thinking. But that's another sermon. The word Nazir comes from the root Nun Zayin Resh, which means to dedicate or to set aside. And it's related to the root Nun Dalet Resh. And the Zayin and the Dalet sometimes are interchangeable. And that root means to vow. And in Semitic languages, you can get some words that mean the same thing with a Zayin sound or with a Dalet sound. And so in Aramaic, for instance, the word for vows is nidrei, as in kol nidrei, very good, which means all the vows, which is the opening prayer of Yom Kippur. That's what I say the rabbis did not succeed in getting rid of vows, right? Because we have a whole service about it all day. So not a lot of success, but again, that's another sermon. Now, although the word is masculine, Nazir, it is extraordinary that women can make binding vows already in biblical times. One reason why our ancient rabbis discouraged people from making vows altogether is that in the system in which the vows this way emerged, after the destruction of the temple in the year 70 of the Common Era, sacrifices and offerings ceased, and therefore there was no way for a person to get out of a vow, right? Because if you wanted to get out, you had to bring a sacrifice. Enters Kol Nidrei, but that's another sermon. But if we set aside really the rabbi's rather negative approach to the Nazir idea, we can see that the Torah does not approach the Nazir in any negative way. Au contraire, it was a way for men and women to help someone who aspires voluntarily to higher levels of holiness. That was the path you can go on. According to the great medieval rabbi and teacher Moses Maimonides, a community is blessed by having in its midst a handful of individuals who commit themselves to a more strenuous religious regiment. So it's good to have a few Nazirim and Nazirot. In other words, sometimes people who may not conform to the norms as neatly as others have the power to enrich and challenge the community in ways that we all benefit from. And the Nazir is an example of someone who takes religion more seriously and perhaps could be a model for some of us. In her commentary to this week's Torah portion, found in a book that I've been using a lot this Pride Month called Torah Queries, Queeris, Rabbi Tova Spitzer suggests that this parasha contains a collection of laws which, although disconnected from each other, may seem to be unified by the idea of deviance from the norm, something that deviates from the regular norms. We find the case of the person being sent away from the camp because of tum'ah, ritual impurity, and then Next chapter, the case of the sotah, which is the ordeal of the woman accused of adultery. She has to drink something, very strange. Anyways, Rabbi Spitzer teaches, quote, the Nazarite was definitely outside the social norm, separating him or herself both through appearance, having uncut hair, and behavior, abstaining from wine, avoiding all contact with the dead. But unlike the person in the state of tum'ah, the transgressor, or the sotah, that woman accused of adultery, the Nazarite proclaimed his or her difference for him or herself and willingly took on an outsider's status as a path to holiness. That is to say, while in the other cases, the act of singling out a person was imposed from the outside, in this case, the Nazir, their vows, were an expression of who they were and who they wanted to be. And in my mind, taking a vow in this way resembles a lot to the act of coming out, as in coming out of the closet. And the Nazir, so to speak, comes out as a person whose inner spiritual search is different than most people. That is the definition of queer. Rabbi Spitzer teaches that the Nazir could be a source of inspiration not only for ancient communities, but also for us. It can be a guiding principle as to how we, as a community, relate to queer people among us. And she writes, quote, using the Nazarite model, queerness is not bad, and deviant does not mean diseased or evil. Quite the opposite. It is a self-proclaimed path to holiness, a claim of difference that is socially sanctioned and perhaps even exalted, end quote. During Pride Month, we should reflect on our own biases and question whether we are willing or not to see queerness as something good, as a blessing indeed. A couple of decades ago, I read a book about being gay and Jewish titled Twice Blessed. The book came out in 1989, and it's showing its age a lot, because at that time, the title Twice Blessed was meant as tongue-in-cheek. What the authors had in mind was twice cursed, because if you happened to be part of the Jewish community and also gay or lesbian, you would probably suffer twice the amount of discrimination. And thinking about that book reminded me of where I was 24 years ago or so. As I mentioned, this Shabbat marks 24 years since my rabbinic ordination. There was no talk of queer anything at that service, trust me. And actually 30 years since I first applied to rabbinical school. One of the main reasons why I came to this country is because of the Hebrew Union College's policy to ordain openly gay rabbis. That, however, was never discussed during the admission process. I was thrilled to be admitted. In fact, it was more that I was admitted, it was actually more tolerated on campus than admitted. In those days, we were advised that at our student pulpits, we should not disclose our sexual orientation. And as a matter of fact, even at my first pulpit after I became an ordained rabbi, I was really not out. I think that it was about 2 or 3 years, until not months, years, until Chris came up with me to Lima, Ohio as my friend. That's only 30 years ago. And then we spoke about the L and the G in LGBTQ+. At best, gay and lesbian people were tolerated at Reform institutions, but never celebrated. No Reform synagogue would consider being led by a gay or lesbian rabbi and call that a blessing. Of course, LGBTQ people have been around since times immemorial, and it was deemed better not to highlight that fact about the person. We were outsiders. One did not want to be the gay rabbi, but maybe one should have been. And as a matter of fact, if you check the listings in the Kansas City Star about Pride Month, and you look at Friday, the 24th of June, you will see that Best Star is going to have a service led by a gay rabbi, unnamed, but is out there now. That's it, I'm out. But in those days, we really censored ourselves. It was hard to imagine that being queer was something that could enhance a rabbi's work or that it could benefit a congregation. Today, I know that I was mistaken, and we were really all mistaken. But have we learned really from our mistakes? I'm afraid that that we have not, if we do not constantly ask the question, how can a person who doesn't conform to the norm be a blessing to our community? The Torah has much to teach us about oddities and blessings. The chapter about the Nazir concludes with one of perhaps the best known words in the whole Torah. Listen to this transition. This happens at the end of chapter 6, verses 21 through 24, talking for 20 verses about the Nazir and blah, blah, blah. And then, Zot Torat HaNazir, such is the obligation of the Nazirite. He or she must do exactly according to the vow that they have made beyond their obligation as Nazirites. Adonai spoke to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons, thus shall you bless the people of Israel. Say to them, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Adonai bless you and protect you." What's going on here? How do we get from the strange laws about the Nazir to all of a sudden asking the priest to bless the people? Comes out of nowhere. What is the priestly blessing doing here? It is simply out of place. Was it a scribal error? Or maybe someone was just not paying attention? I seriously doubt it. The Torah is too closely preserved as a text to just be casually dropped there. So Rabbi Spitzer gives us what I think is a beautiful, excuse me. Here comes a punchline I can't say because I'm coughing. Gives us a beautiful interpretation based on many teachings and all the times that we have found, that the commentators have found something really odd about the text. She writes, perhaps this is what's going on. The dedication of the Nazirites claiming of his identity for himself by taking the queer path as a path to holiness leads to blessings for the entire community. The priest, who in the earlier segments is the enforcer of norms and the gatekeeper between the deviant and the larger society, here becomes a vessel of blessing, not judgment. Parashat Naso has led us on a path from viewing queer status as an impurity or transgression to the blessing of self-proclaimed difference as an avenue of holiness and connection to the divine. And perhaps this is the path on which we have been for the last 2 centuries, turning what we once tolerated into a source of blessings. Blessings for our congregation, and we pray in time for the world. And ken yehi ratzon, and may that be God's will. So our music team comes back. I invite you all to turn to page 586 and to stand with us for Aleinu L'Shabech.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
As we prepare for our moment of remembrance, I invite you to turn to page 595. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways that we remember. We have heard of the passing of Henry Frankel, uncle of Floyd Frankel, and we're observing the Shloshim period for Tony Ross, brother and brother-in-law of Jeff and Gail Ross. And on this Shabbat, we remember the following yortzites of members of our congregation: Lester Aronson, Isabel Berman, Paul Brown, Maury Engelberg, Bertha Ruben Gary, Robin Goldstein, Irving Kay, Rose Klinock, Julius Lerner, William Pittler, Vicky Stein-Polman, Ruth Renai, Herbert Myron Rope, Pearl Schaefer, Jack Slade, Fred Sosnoff, Theodore Willoughby. Zichronam livracha, may the memories be for a blessing. Page 598, join together as a congregation in Kaddish Yatom, the mourners Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, be'alema divra chirute ve'amlich malchute, b'chayechon u'vyamechon u'b'chayei dechol beit Israel, ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imhu amen. יהא שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו, לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דא אמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
הוא עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ויעקב ישראל, ואמרו,
It is time for some announcements. I won't say anything because she has her own song. I don't need to introduce her.
This is Aviva's song. The announcements are coming, they won't take too long. If you want to do some Jewish, she won't steer you wrong. This is Aviva's song.
Shalom. Thank you to everyone who made this service possible, Rabbi Katapan, Leslie Zucker, Larry, Joel, Warren, and Dave for bringing us beyond our walls. So thank you, everyone, very, very much. And a few quick announcements. We will continue our Shabbat celebration tomorrow morning, June 11th. All are welcome to join us for Sichat Shabbat, our Shabbat conversation, which will take place in the library and also on Zoom with Rabbi Katapan. And then we will be in here for our Shabbat morning service at 10:30 a.m., and that will also be live streamed like this service. So all are welcome to join us in person and on our virtual platforms. Tomorrow is the long-awaited barbecue bash. We are so excited. The weather is looking beautiful, so we will be outside. So the entire CBT backyard will be filled with people and food and games and music, and it will be amazing. We're up to over 190 people. Joining us in person all outdoors, so it will be very safe. It is from 6 until 9 p.m. All are welcome to come. RSVP, no RSVP, all good. And I promise there will be delicious food. 2 quick reminders is we recommend bringing bug spray because at night the bugs can get quite something, and your own lawn chair because, as was mentioned earlier, the Juby brothers will be performing. And if you would like a front row seat, you could just pull your lawn chair right up. So bug spray and lawn chairs. And just one more quick announcement. On Thursday, all are welcome to join Rabbi Katapan for Multi-Access Lunch and Learn, which is at noon. So you can join him in the library here at Beth Torah or on Zoom. And all of the information is in the e-news. Join us in the Ulam after this for a little bit of sweetness, and then join us tomorrow for all of the sweetness. Shabbat Shalom.
And if Mincha is your thing, we'll be having Mincha service worship in here at 5:30 before Rabbi Scott White will be leading a Mincha service in here.
That's true. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Some people just cannot get enough praying in a weekend. And if you're that person, we're going to help you out.
Oh, that's very nice. Very live. We conclude together singing Eveinu Shalom Aleichem. That's on page 644. If you're able, please stand and join us. It's also on screen, so you don't have to go to the page.
Eveinu Shalom Aleichem. Eveinu Shalom Aleichem. Eveinu Shalom Aleichem. Eveinu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem. Eveinu Shalom Aleichem. Eveinu Shalom Aleichem. Eveinu Shalom Aleichem. Eveinu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Take care of each other out there.